going through these the first two parshas in Shemois, which is Shemois and Ve'era, I was having some difficulty understanding the introduction we have with Moshe Rabenu. As we know Moshe Rabenu as the greatest prophet that ever lived, the greatest person, and it seems when we're introduced to him, the Torah introduces him, he's always arguing with Hashem. He's always like having these arguments. He doesn't want to do any shlichus, any message, any task that Hashem gives him. But then, at some point, there's this transition stage that he turns into the Moshe Rabenu that we know, which is the strong, powerful, confident, doing Hashem's ratzon, being that perfect Eved Neman, right? So, what exactly happened? What switched? What changed? And it seems from the beginning of Shemois and Ve'era that I don't really want to say this, but it seems like maybe Moshe Rabenu seemed to be on a more elementary level. That's what it would seem. If you read the Psukim, it seems like he's arguing with Hashem. It seems like it's not the Moshe Rabenu that we know, the great, awesome Moshe Rabenu. We'll give a couple examples. You see, one example is Moshe's complaining and saying to Hashem that I'm supposed to tell the Jews, right? I'm supposed to tell the Jews that Hashem's going to redeem you. And he said, "V'yan Moshe v'yomer v'hein lo yaminu li v'lo yishmu b'koili ki yomu lo nira elecha Hashem." He says that to Hashem, Moshe says to Hashem, the Jews are not going to listen to me. They're not going to believe that Hashem told me that He's going to come take you out. You didn't hear that. And then another time we see when Hashem asks him, "Please go to Pari. Tell him to send out my people." What did he say? He says, "Kvad peh, kvad lashon anochi." Moshe Rabbeinu said, "I can't." Every time Hashem's calling upon him to do a task, he's giving, so to speak, excuses. It seems like this Moshe Rabbeinu is not the Moshe Rabbeinu we know. It sounds like an elementary level that he's starting off on, but Chas v'Shalom, we cannot say that. Another example, in this week's parsha we see, it's a Vaydaber Moshe lifnei Hashem leimar Hein b'nei Yisrael lo yishamu alai ve'ech yishmeni par b'ni rasa v'sayim. Very similar. He says the Jews didn't listen to me and Par is not going to listen to me. It sounds like saying, don't send me. Like we know, you're standing there for 7 days saying, don't send me, don't send me, don't send me. What's going on here? This is the Moshe Rabbeinu, the great, awesome Moshe Rabbeinu. So I had a lot of trouble understanding this because we know who Moshe Rabbeinu really is. So I want to suggest that all these things that seem that it's really just Moshe complaining and seems very elementary and very little, that's actually exactly why Hashem chose Moshe Rabbeinu. Let's re-look at all those examples that I just gave. The first example was that he said, the Jews are not going to listen to me, that I saw and that I spoke to God, and that He's going to take us out. Pari, you want me to go to Pari? Pari is not going to listen to me. What does this say? You could look at it the first way I looked at it, which is that he is just arguing, or that he was chosen specifically because he was going to be the leader, the manig of Klal Yisrael. And one of the most important character traits for a leader to have is to know that what he's going to say is going to be listened to. People are going to be receptive to what he has to say. So he's going to be the manig, the leader of Klal Yisrael. He's telling Hashem, you want me to be the leader? I, being the leader, understand that the Jews are not going to be able to, they're not going to listen to me. If you want me to go to Pari and you want me to do something that's effective, I know Pari is not going to listen to me. I'm a kvad peh, it's not a respectful way to go to a king. I know, Hashem, you seemingly have your plans, but if you want me to give a message that will be listened to, it's not going to happen. And that's That's why Hashem's calling on him, because he has characteristics. Thank you. Of a manig. So, let's go to a couple of examples. If you look back at these examples one more time, right? What do you see? He says, the Jews are not going to listen to me, Paro's not going to listen to me, don't bother sending me, right? I'll give some other examples now. You see that by, when Hashem says, Moshe says to Hashem, please tell the Jews that I'm going to redeem them. Moshe says, when they ask, what's the name of Hashem? What's the name of God, the God of the forefathers? Right? What should I tell them? So Hashem says, tell them, Ekya Asher Ekya. Right? I shall be who I shall be. And Rashi says, what does it mean? What's the depth of that name? Hashem says, I will be with you in this galus, in Mitzrayim, and I'll be with you in the future galus. And what does Moshe reply? Hashem, they're in a galus right now. In order for them to be receptive, right? Don't tell them about future galus. And Hashem is masking to him, and Hashem says, only say Ekya Shalachan, right? Hashem, only say that Hashem sent you, don't mention other galus. And you see that Moshe was really right as the leader, and he was right in his message what he was trying to tell Hashem, because you see in this week's parsha it says, "V'daber Moshe Keino b'nei Yisrael." Right, he gave over the message that Hashem is going to redeem them, and what happened? V'loi shamu el Moshe mikotzer ruach mavoda kasha. They didn't listen. They couldn't listen. Moshe knew they weren't going to listen because they were broken people. He knew that they were not going to be receptive. So the question is, and actually one more point. You see, when at the end of last week's parsha, when Moshe comes out from before Paro, and Paro makes the burden on the Jews much harder. Moshe goes back to Hashem, also complaining, and says, "You sent me to bring out the Jews. You wanted me to help bring out the Jews, and it didn't work." He said, "Not just that. For the second that I came to Paro, I told you not to send me, Hashem, because I knew he wasn't going to listen. The second I went to Paro, it only got worse, right?" He says, "Ma'az basi al Paro, l'daber b'shmecha, heir la'am hazeh, v'hatzer lo yitzalta samecha." You didn't save your nation. So why am I here? I told you it's not going to work. So what happens? Where's the bridge that we have this Moshe Rabenu, right, who is the manig and who is arguing this point to Hashem, and then we have the Moshe Rabenu that we know, the great and awesome Moshe Rabenu. So it's in the middle of this week's parsha, right before the first Makkah. Because if we know we all know Moshe Rabenu during the Makkahs, right? What happens? He's a gibor. He comes into Paro whenever he wants. He gets him in all these uncomfortable positions. He says, test me. When do you want me to remove it? I'll remove it whenever you want. I got it. He's confident. He's doing whatever Hashem asks him to do. You don't see him questioning Hashem anymore. So this is what happens. Hashem sends him another time to Paro, and he says, "Ata tidaber es kol asher atzavecha." And now he says, Hashem says to Moshe, "Va'ani aksha es leiv Paro, ve'erbesi es oisai v'esmorfsai be'eretz Mitzrayim." And guess what? V'lo yishma aleichem Paro, v'nasati es yadi v'mitzrayim v'teisi es sevoisai es ami es b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim b'shvatim midar. What is he saying? Finally, Hashem reveals to Moshe what his real goal was. You, Moshe, understood to be a manik, to be a leader, you only want to say things that are going to be receptive. You're right. And that's why I'm choosing you as the manik. But you didn't understand what I wanted in your first shlichus, which was not to be successful. I'm going to harden Paro's heart. And guess what? Lo yishma aleichem Paro. Hashem saying Paro is not going to listen to you and Aaron. Really, you're right. To be a leader, you have to know that your message is going to be listened to. But in this case, I want you to say it and be rejected in order that I could show how powerful I am in Mitzrayim and to really bring all the makas and bring everything Midah Keneged Midah like the Mitzrayim deserved. Now, just to bring out this point in the story, there's a story of Rav Yisrael of Vizhnitz. Now, Rav Yisrael of Vizhnitz had this minhag that he would go every night walking with his gabbai. Half-hour walk. And on one of these walks, sometimes interesting things would happen. So they're walking, and they passing the house of one of the maskilim. Maskilim was from the Enlightenment. These people had started to have new ideas within Judaism, and obviously it was not our traditional Judaism as we know it. So this Rebbe, right, Yisrael of Vizhnitz, made a little detour and stops at the front door of this mosque. And he knocks on the door. And the servant opens the door, sees the esteemed rabbi, lets the rabbi in, sits him at the table, and in comes the maskil. The maskil was, of course, very polite, but he was not the biggest fan or chassid of the Rebbe. And they sit, the maskil sits down, the gabbai sits down, and they're sitting at the table, and the Rebbe is 100% silent. Sitting there. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The maskil is getting nervous. He turns to the gabbai and he's like, why is the Rebbe here? Why is he? If he's here, maybe he has something to tell me. He's not saying anything. What's going on? The Rabbi said, I have no idea. I don't know. I'm just walking with the Rabbi. I have no idea. Okay. After a couple more minutes pass by, the Rebbe gets up. He says, thank you so much. Inviting me in. I appreciate it. It's so nice of you. He gives him a bracha, and he turns to leave. So the maskil is like, okay, he's a very respectful man. So he walks the Rebbe, and as he's walking, he decides to walk him home. So they're walking together, the three of them, and it's just itching at him. What did the Rebbe come to my house for? What's going on? So he was trying to control himself, and then finally, when they're about to approach the Rebbe's house, he says, I'm sorry, Rebbe. I know this is out of place and it's inappropriate, but please tell me, why did you come to my house? They said, I wanted to be Mekayim a certain mitzvah, and I could only do that in your house. That's why I came to your house. So he said, what mitzvah? He said, we know sages tell us, right? Chacham tell us that it's a mitzvah when you have something to tell a person and they're going to be receptive, to tell them. It's a mitzvah to tell them. He said, but so too, it's a mitzvah when you know someone's not going to be receptive. It's a mitzvah not to tell them. But sitting in my house, not telling you a message that I really want to tell you, I'm not fulfilling a mitzvah. So I had to come to your house and sit in front of you and not tell you the message in order that I could fulfill this mitzvah. So the maskil starts begging him, please tell me the message. No, I can't. You're not going to be receptive. That's why I can't tell you the message. Please tell me the message. Back and forth. Finally he says, if you really want to know, I'll tell you. So this maskil was the manager in the bank. He said there's a widow who has a mortgage with the bank, and she can't pay her mortgage, and next week they're going to kick her out of her house and she's going to be on the street. He said, what I want you to do is forgive this loan. So the maskil looks at the Rebbe like he's nuts and says, you want me to forgive the loan? First of all, it's for hundreds of dollars in that time. It's for a large amount of money. And second of all, I happen to manage the bank. It's not my money. I just manage it. You want me to come to forgive the loan? I can't do that. He said, you're having kindness of me. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you wouldn't be receptive. So he said, That's why I didn't want to tell you. You're the one that forced it out of me. I said, okay. That night, the Moscow was laying on his bed, and the words of the Rebbe were just seeping into him and seeped into his heart. And he decided that he's going to front all the money to pay for this lady's death. And he paid all the money. And that is a manik. A manik, right? This Rabbi Shloimie Bochner is a manik. Someone that knows when a message will be recepted well, when someone's going to listen, when they're not going to listen. That's what it takes, and that's what I think we see from these two parshas, especially in the introduction of who Moshe Rabenu is. We really see this point and how he was the one chosen to be the leader of the Jewish people.